They say every neighborhood has that one guy who takes the HOA too seriously. But ours had Franklin Burke. This man strutted around like he wore a badge, clipboard tucked under one arm, phone always ready to snap pictures. He wasn't elected. He wasn't appointed. He just decided he was the HOA patrol. And last week, he crossed a line that Grandma wasn't about to let slide. It started with the creak of our backyard fence at 5:30 in the morning. I was still groggy pouring cereal when Grandma, sitting in her rocker on the porch, muttered, "There he goes again." Sure enough, Franklin was scaling our fence like a burglar, phone in hand, snapping photos of Grandma's rose bushes. He claimed they violated community aesthetics. Can you imagine? A 72-year-old widow tending to her roses was apparently a crime against the neighborhood. I wanted to storm out there and confront him, but Grandma just raised a hand and said, "Patience. Let a fool show himself long enough and he'll write his own ending." That was her way. Calm, steady, the exact opposite of Franklin's manic energy. This wasn't the first time Franklin trespassed. Twice before, we caught him snooping around near our shed. Once even rattling the door like he expected to find contraband. Grandma reported him to the HOA board, but the president, Margaret Blake, brushed it off with a smile. "Oh, Franklin's just enthusiastic. He cares about the neighborhood." Enthusiastic. The man was breaking state trespassing law. But the HOA hid behind technicalities, claiming it was internal enforcement. Grandma wasn't buying it. She called the sheriff's office, and while they sympathized, they explained the gray area. Unless we caught Franklin in the act and pressed charges immediately, it was our word against his. That's when Grandma hatched her plan. For the next 3 days, she tinkered in the garage, humming old jazz tunes while I fetched her tools. By the 4th day, our wrought iron gate had a new modification: low-voltage electric wiring. Perfectly legal under state code, provided it was marked. Grandma even posted a bright yellow sign, "Warning, Electrified gate. Trespassers will be shocked." And right on schedule, Franklin came prowling again before dawn. Grandma sat on the porch sipping her tea while I crouched by the window, heart thudding. Franklin climbed the fence, boots crunching the gravel, muttering something about violations. The second his gloved hand gripped the gate snap, a jolt sent him yelping like a startled dog. He stumbled back, arms flailing, landed in the dirt, and limped toward the street. Grandma didn't move an inch. She just leaned back in her chair, eyes twinkling. That, she said softly, was the sound of justice. The whole street was buzzing. Franklin Burke, limping down Oak Lane, had turned into the day's entertainment. Neighbors whispered in driveways, stifling laughter as the self-appointed HOA patrol tried to spin the story. He told anyone who'd listen that Grandma had installed illegal traps on her property. But most folks knew the truth. Everyone had seen Franklin's antics, snooping in yards, measuring grass with a ruler, even peeking through curtains at night. Still, Franklin wasn't about to take the hit quietly. By noon, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I went with Grandma just to keep things calm, but I should have known it was going to be a circus. Margaret Blake, the HOA president, sat at the head of the table, pearls around her neck and that fake smile plastered on her face. Franklin sat to her right, arm in a sling for dramatic effect. He pointed at Grandma like he'd uncovered a crime. "Sane, this woman," Franklin declared, "is endangering the neighborhood. She's rigged up an electrified weapon." That gate nearly killed me. Grandma didn't flinch. She simply leaned forward, placed a folded piece of paper on the table, and said, "That, Mrs. Blake, is a permit issued under the state electrical code. Fully legal, clearly signed, and I posted the required warning notice." Margaret tried to wriggle out of it. "Legal or not, it's aggressive. It goes against the spirit of community living. The HOA has the right to regulate installations." Grandma's voice dropped into that gravelly tone that always made me sit straighter. "Regulate, sure. Trespass, no. The state trespassing statute makes it a crime to enter private property without consent. Franklin has done it 3 times. I'm done warning him. Next time I'll press charges." You could feel the shift in the room. Neighbors who had been silent suddenly nodded. One woman spoke up. "Franklin came into my backyard last month to measure my shrubs. I thought I was the only one." Another chimed in. "He photographed my kids' bikes and called them an eyesore." The tide was turning, and Franklin's face went redder with every word. Margaret banged the gavel. desperate to regain control. But Grandma cut her off. "No, ma'am. We're discussing Franklin's obsession. You let him run around like he owns the neighborhood, and now he's learned what happens when you step on the wrong porch." Franklin didn't take the humiliation well. For 2 days straight, he circled our block in his dented pickup like a vulture, slowing in front of our driveway as if waiting for the gate to open. Grandma barely acknowledged him. She just sat on the porch with her thermos of tea, eyes sharp as ever. On the third night, Franklin couldn't resist. Just past midnight, I woke to the sound of rustling near the gate. I peeked out my window, and there he was, flashlight in one hand, bolt cutters in the other, muttering curses under his breath. He was actually going to break through. Grandma was already waiting. From her rocking chair, she pulled out a small handheld remote. "Watch this, kid," she whispered. The moment Franklin clamped the cutters onto the steel, Grandma clicked the remote. Zap. The low hum of the electrified wires surged, and Franklin's body jolted like he'd grabbed a live hornet nest. He yelped, dropped the cutters, and stumbled into the mud. Grandma calmly sipped her tea. "Trespassing again," she muttered. Then she pointed her phone, camera already rolling. Every stutter, every curse, every slip in the mud was caught in 1080p. But Franklin didn't stop. He whipped out his own phone and dialed 911, screaming, "Attempted murder. This lunatic is trying to kill me with an illegal fence." 5 minutes later, red and blue lights washed across the yard. Officers spilled out, hands on their holsters, looking from Franklin, muddy, trembling, clutching his arm, to Grandma, who sat on the porch like it was just another Thursday night. "Mom," one officer asked, "is there an active electrical device on that gate?" "Yes," Grandma replied evenly. "Registered, permitted, posted with warnings, and recorded. Here's the paperwork." She slid the laminated permit across the porch table. Then she handed over her phone, video still playing. The officers watched Franklin climb, cut, and fry himself in full HD. One officer looked up, deadpan. "So, you trespassed," Franklin sputtered. "No, I was conducting an inspection for the HOA. "Inspection?" The other officer raised a brow. "At midnight with bolt cutters, the law couldn't have been clearer. Under state code, Franklin was guilty of criminal trespassing, vandalism, attempted theft, and his 911 stunt. That was a false police report, another charge stacked on top." The officers cuffed him right there in front of the glowing gate. Franklin shouted about conspiracies, about Grandma being a danger to the community, but nobody listened. Neighbors had gathered at the commotion, and this time, they weren't whispering. They were clapping. Grandma leaned back in her chair, nodded at me, and said, "Sometimes, kid, justice just needs a little electricity." Franklin, meanwhile, sat in the back of the cruiser, drenched in sweat, his reputation in shreds, and his self-appointed HOA badge confiscated on the spot. The gate he thought he could conquer had turned into the very thing that destroyed him. Because when you mess with a woman like Grandma, you don't just lose the fight, you light the fuse for your whole HOA to come crashing down.